Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, it is outstanding. Although we are not quite like always, because Tony, we have a new YouTube channel, which if people are watching live on YouTube, they have obviously already figured out. But if they're not watching on YouTube right now, well, then they should. Tony, what should they do? What would you recommend that they do?
Well, I can't recommend them to watch if they're not watching now, Tom. So you've put me in a bind. I would recommend I'm sending this out telepathically to the people who are not watching, saying watch. And if you're listening to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast, this is being derived from later on today. Go back to the YouTube page, Buckeye Huddle YouTube page, and this video in particular, and subscribe. Hit the bell. If you're watching on YouTube right now, hit that bell, subscribe. You hit the bell, you'll be notified when we go live for the future, when we drop any videos, drop any highlights from practice, drop any random, hey, it's 4 p.m. on a Tuesday. Let's go live. It is Tuesday, right?
It is Tuesday, yes.
Okay. And today, let's just start with what we saw today with the linebackers and Jim Knowles. Did not get to see any practice. We will be there Thursday for some practice. And since the Big Ten Network is there, maybe more practice than normal, but I'm not going to try to jinx myself on that one.
Yeah, normally the way they do it is we'll have a bunch of practices where we'll watch the first 4 periods, 5 periods. Sometimes we'll get what our buddy Jerry likes to call bonus coverage, and then you get to stay for 5, 6, 7 periods. And but when the Big Ten Network is there, they're there for the whole practice. So at that point, the whole thing's literally on TV. So then it's, all of it's going out there already. So then they don't necessarily mind having us there for the whole time. So we can't necessarily always shoot video of the whole thing, but we can often stay for the whole thing, which is fantastic because then you see a lot more than you do during some of the other practices. So that's fingers crossed that is how it will be handled on Thursday.
You say they don't mind. They definitely mind us being there for the whole thing, but it's like we've kind of like, well, how you're letting other people here. Why do you not let everybody in? You kind of back them into a corner because that always works against Ohio State. If you just back them in a corner, they will back down and you will get your way. So some of the things that we're going to talk about here, we've previously talked about for the morning show tomorrow, Buckeyes tomorrow morning. So you'll be able to check that out on the same channel as well. It's not going to be a repeat, but there are some things that we need to discuss. First thing I want to discuss is Chip Trayanum losing his black stripe. We got a question on Twitter. What exactly does that entail? Why do they do it? What's the point of it? And it's just it's a way to recognize the newcomers who have finally been adopted as or knighted as full-fledged Buckeyes. Basically, they've done enough work on the practice field, in the classroom being the meeting room, and probably also the classroom, but have done enough where they've bought in, they've done what they were expected to do to become Buckeyes, and they're not game ready by any means, but this is just a way to recognize them, get that black stripe taken off, let them be part of the rest of the Buckeye team.
Essentially, they're not trainees anymore. Like you come in and you're just kind of getting the orientation and learning about the place and how does this machine work and all that kind of stuff. Now those are guys who are, this was an Urban Meyer thing. He did that at Florida. He did that at Ohio State. You come in, you start with that black stripe on your helmet, and then when you sort of have proven yourself to the team that you are going to be a good teammate, that you know what you're doing, that you are. As you said, it doesn't necessarily mean game ready, but also it's a decent estimate for guys who they feel like we can trust this guy. He may not be the best option at this position, but he's someone who we trust to be doing the right things right now. That's a decent, it's a decent way to kind of know sort of what they're thinking there. Virtually always, it will be a transfer an older guy who comes in and who is the first one who loses his black stripe. Tanner McAllister was the first one to lose his black stripe this spring, transfer from Oklahoma State. Now Chip Trainum loses his black stripe, the first one in the fall. So, I mean, it's sort of what you expected, but also it's a good sign that things are sort of progressing as you would sort of hope they would with a guy who's, not fresh out of high school. He's been a major college football player for a couple of years now. So you would expect him to be, game ready or close enough to game ready, probably before some of the true freshmen, especially the early enrollee kind of guys. And that sounds like that's, how this has sort of worked out for him.
Yeah, it's a rite of passage. Like where I'm from in Northwest Ohio, Henry County, the rite of passage would be like, as a 15-year-old, can you go into a carryout and buy a pack of cigarettes? Stuff like that. It's just, you've matured to a certain point. Florida Buckeye asking any update on Jordan Hancock. Jordan Hancock has been held out a little bit, the sophomore cornerback, held out of practice. He's been dressing, so I don't know that it's anything major. It's just during camp, especially early on when there's lingering things or something has happened, they don't want to push them too much so that they can't have them for like the start of the season. So you got to be careful with them. Jim Knowles was asked if this was like a long-term or like just a prognosis on Jordan Hancock. He said it was above his pay grade, so he wasn't going to go into that. Unfortunately, he's fully learned the Ryan Day rules on speaking on injuries, and that he doesn't do it anymore. But like the way I view it is, if they are still at practice and still fully dressed, then that's much better than we didn't see him at practice at all, or you see him and he's on crutches. There's no boot, there's no crutches, there's nothing. And so no reason to think it's a long-term issue. They have had to move a couple of, but they had Cameron Martinez and Jansen Dunn playing some corner today. Now, Jim Knowles said it is a long-term concern at corner. And I think some people may be taking that quote out of context a little bit as it relates to Jordan Hancock. It's just the fact that they have 6 corners and they want to keep these 6 scholarship corners. So that's not a lot. And so you're going to have to cross-train a couple of these safeties. And Jansen Dunn, we've talked about him as a possible nickel. And so he played that cover safety a little bit last year. So he has that kind of skill set. And, of course, Cameron Martinez does as well as the number 2 nickel. So he can cover guys as well. And basically what Jim Knowles said, it's a long season. You want to keep these guys fresh. Guys are going to get hurt, minor, major, and you need more guys than just 6. So that's why it's a long-term concern for him.
Right. And that, I think one of the things that sort of exacerbates that a little bit is corner, Denzel Burke sort of being the exception here. Corner is not a spot where you generally expect people to just waltz onto campus and right into the starting lineup. That's not how it usually works. I go back to, Jeff Okuda, who came in as a 5-star recruit. They had the number 1 and number 2 corners in that class that year. It was Jeff Okuda and Sean Wade. And Sean Wade was hurt and missed the whole season with an abdominal thing. And then Jeff Okuda sort of played a little bit, but you really didn't see him. He didn't start until the Cotton Bowl, and that was only because Denzel Ward had opted out of the Cotton Bowl. And he was fine. He wasn't incredible, and that's someone who ended up being a top 5 NFL draft pick and who was a 5-star prospect. So that's someone who is presumably coming in about as game ready as you could be, and then ended up being living up to all of that hype and all of those expectations. And he wasn't ready till the very end of the season, really, that year. Denzel Burke, obviously came in last year, just day one and started. That says a lot about Denzel Burke. It also sort of talks a little bit about some, Sevyn Banks was hurt at the beginning of last year, and they were real thin at the corner spot. So, if you're at a position, you've got 6 guys on scholarship. This is presumably Cam Brown's last year. You have 3 guys, Hancock, J.K. Johnson, and Jordan Hancock, and Denzel Burke, who next year could be their last year. Then you've only, you've got 2-ish guys. It's just the 2 true freshmen who could be left after that, because they basically took a 0 on the class of 2021 recruiting. because Legend Cavazos is gone, Ryan Turner is gone, and so you've got Ryan Watts. Yeah, sorry, Ryan Watts is gone. So you're kind of missing the 2021 class entirely. So you have this just big donut hole in the middle, and that's not a spot where you're necessarily, if you lose, say, Brown and Burke, and maybe you lose Hancock, maybe you lose Johnson after next year, you're down to just whoever among that group is left. Jair Brown, Ryan Turner, who presumably are still there for 2022, and then they've got guys committed for 2023, but that's it takes a while to get up to speed. So that is a problem that can become a big issue relatively quickly, because you got guys hitting the portal in quick succession potentially, and then it can take a long time to fill those holes unless you can land someone in the portal, and that is far from a guarantee. So that's I think why that's a pretty significant long-term concern, which it's also why when we talk about the class of 2023, they're looking at a lot of defensive backs. That's one of the reasons why.
I saw some concern about something Jim Knowles said about J.K. Johnson. He was asked, what do you see his role being this year? And Knowles' answer was too soon to tell. It's 5 practices in. That's going to be a common answer for a lot of guys. That doesn't mean there is no role for him. That just means he's a redshirt freshman, needs to show a lot and had a good spring, needs to have a good fall and just continue. But as far as is he the third guy? Is he the fourth guy? Is there going to be rotation? That's all too early to tell. And when you're asking what kind of role he's going to have, it's probably nothing. Like we're going to have him specifically. We want him doing this on whatever down. It's his role is probably backup corner. Other than that, way too early to tell. And it's stuff like that. And can he make more of that? Can he do more than just be a backup? Too early to tell. It's 5 practices in. There's a lot of too early to tell. All of these safeties they've got that they're trying to figure out how to use. It's too early to tell on how they're going to use all of them. Before we do get to the safeties, I want to address this Jordan Kapler question. I think we should start a GoFundMe to get Tom and Brian Ferentz to hang out and become best friends. I can tell you that being friends with Tom, Brian would have to get used to being insulted, which we know Tom would do that because he does that even now as mortal enemies with Brian Ferentz. But as long as you just – Tom says a lot of stuff, but he doesn't mean it, right?
I mean, I've got to say, first of all, if saying that Brian Ferentz might not be a very good offensive coordinator means that I need to be friends with Brian Ferentz would be a very, very popular guy. I'm not the only person who shares that opinion. Brian Ferentz would also have to become pretty good friends with the NCAA offensive statistics, yards per play, points per game, all of those kind of things. He would have to make pretty good friends with those as well. So, yeah, I mean, I'm fine with hanging out with Brian Ferentz. I'm sure he has, a nice, a nice setup. I'm sure he has access to it. I'm guessing Kirk Ferentz has some nice vacation places somewhere that Brian Ferentz could probably hang out at. Let's go hang out at my, my parents' nice vacation home in, I don't know, Cedar Rapids. I don't know where do people from Iowa have vacation homes, but wherever it is. There you go. So yeah, I'm sure Brian Ferentz is a perfectly lovely human being, and I am not the only person who is of the opinion that Brian Ferentz might not be the greatest offensive coordinator in college football history.
So if Brian's gives you calls Tom, let's go hang out at my dad's timeshare.
Yeah, I think so. Maybe play some golf, because we know his scores are never very high, so that means he's probably a good golfer, right?
Absolutely, no doubt. And I mean, golf is boring, so that would suit him just fine. Cameron Sauter here. Any wide receivers showing flashes outside of the 3-4 starters? First of all, I love the fact that you say 3 or 4 starters. That I commend you for going beyond just 3 starters, because I agree there are 4 starters at this point. I am really interested. I know everybody wants to talk about the freshmen. I think it's going to take a little bit of time for those guys, as it normally does. Cam Babb, Xavier Johnson, Jaden Ballard, those are the 3 that we've really got to focus on in terms of they're all veterans. I mean, can we call Jaden Ballard a veteran? No, but he's experienced. He's not quite an upperclassman yet, but he's on the cusp of having a taste, and that drives a lot of guys. But I think Cam Babb, I think everybody obviously wants to see him. I remember when Marshawn Lattimore was coming back from his injury, and most of his career had been injuries, and then I think it was the spring and summer of like 2016 when he was finally going to emerge as a starter. And he had hamstring injuries and issues throughout his entire career. And Kerry Combs was like, every time he runs, I hold my breath. And he goes full speed and I hold my breath. And you're so concerned that something's going to happen. And it's like everybody else is concerned, but until the player gets over that same concern, they can't be the best version of themselves. And the thing about Cam Babb, he is so mentally strong. I wonder how much he thinks about that, or how much it's just, I just want to play. And really, I'm sure it's impossible not to think about injuries, but when you've been through it, and like, I don't know, maybe it's one of the things, can you put that out of your mind and just focus on everything else?
Yeah, I mean, you have to, we're never going to know the real answer because, even if you asked him directly, he's going to say, yeah, of course, I don't worry about that. Is that true? I don't, that's it. Only he knows that. That's the only person who could possibly really, truly know the answer to that. But I think, I think we've all seen either on, watching other teams or, playing yourself, when you're playing not to get hurt, that's when you get hurt, because then you're not going hard. You're not, that's when bad stuff happens. So I think you almost have to just kind of put it out of your mind, as difficult as I'm sure that is after all of these times. Because, I'll tell you, just like that, what you talked about with Kerry Combs and Marshawn Lattimore, saw him walking across the indoor after practice on Monday, and it was like, oh, good, Cam Babb still looks like he's doing well and is in, not dinged up and seemed from all indications to be. It was like, oh, good, that's wonderful, that's fantastic. And I think with everyone else, if everyone else is thinking that, it would be very natural for him to be kind of feeling like, well, okay, survived another day, and another day closer to the start of the season. But, you kind of have to, in terms of just the mental approach to sports and mental performance that you need to have to perform at the level that you're required to play at Ohio State, you kind of have to just sort of be able to set that aside. And I'm sure that's something that, they have sports psychologists on staff and all that kind of stuff there. And I'm sure that's something that they talk to, not just him about, but, other guys who are coming back from an injury. You always hear guys, a guy blows out his knee and, talks about, just you're kind of holding your breath the first time you make a cut after that, or a pitcher, tears his UCL or whatever in his elbow. And it's just, the first time you're really letting it fly, you're just kind of holding your breath and seeing. And, you would think every time you do it, you get a little more confident, a little more comfortable, and, a little more, okay, one day closer to the season and one more day where this is, everything is working as it should.
And we'll talk to Brian Hartline and the wide receivers in 2 weeks from tomorrow, and I'm sure Cam Babb will be among that group, and maybe the most populated table, even over Jackson Smith-Njigba himself. This question, Finn Trojan Sports: if World War II doesn't happen, does Paul Brown never leave Ohio State, and does Woody Hayes ever come to Ohio State? I always wonder. Having done a little research on this myself, I do think Paul Brown leaves Ohio State because he leaves for the Cleveland AAFL franchise. They gave him a big-time offer, big-time part of the ownership of the franchise, I believe. Just a really good deal. And that was like 1945 or so. So he would have left in plenty of time for Woody Hayes to show up in 1950. So I don't think it changes that much in terms of what could have happened. But you take those 3 years that he was away from Ohio State, and you put him in there, and every likelihood that you got 3 more national championships, because I think, if I recall, some of the guys left to go play with him at the reserve team that he was coaching, and it's like Yeah, I'll go to war. I'll go play for Paul Brown if do I have to go to Germany afterwards? That's no problem. Wherever. But yeah, I still think Woody Hayes is able to end up at Ohio State in 1950.
Yeah, I like the idea that World War II and the draft, the original transfer portal, leaving Ohio State and going to play for Great Lakes Naval Station, or I think he was Great Lakes Naval Station, right? Yeah, it's interesting because you can kind of, I'm with you. I think if you're winning a bunch of national championships and you have the opportunity, you were not getting rich coaching college football back then. This is a very, very different sport back then than it was now. And if you have the opportunity to go coach a pro team, and pro football had sort of established itself enough at that point that I think people figure, okay, this is going to stick around, and you have an opportunity to to own part of the team. I mean, it's they're going to name the team after you. I mean, you can't turn that down, right? Fun alternate history, not what happens with Woody Hayes. What's the name of the team if Paul Brown doesn't go there? There's the real question. I think, I think Woody, he might go somewhere else. If Paul Brown sticks around for a while, he might go somewhere else. But I'm trying to think back just off the top of my head. I don't think Michigan turned over, the real weird, fun alternate history where Woody's coaching Michigan. That's a fun one. I don't think Michigan turned over then, but I would have to go back and actually look for sure. But, you go somewhere else, and then, you go coach Missouri, you go coach Kentucky, and then you coach, Ohio State later if you continue to be successful. I think ultimately as an Ohio guy, the siren song of Ohio State probably calls him home at some point. But yeah, it's an interesting conversation and interesting thought. But yeah, I think I'm with you. I think he ultimately probably does end up coaching Ohio State eventually.
The deal that he went to Cleveland for was $17,500 a year, which and today is like $250,000. So coaching has come a long way, especially professional coaching. But he was also granted a stipend. So that pushes up to $18,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
So these are no small shakes. I mean, this is legit cash. Florida Buckeye asking about Jim Knowles had a lot of praise for C.J. Hicks today. Any insights from the Buckeye Huddle staff? The one quote that I wrote down from Jim Knowles is C.J., his upside is fantastic. Thanks, Jim. We had no idea. Tremendous insight. But yeah, this is another one is just they have to get him into a situation or get him to the point where he's no longer thinking and that he can just react, because he has incredible physical tools. And when they can get him to the point where he can use those tools and isn't slowing himself down by thinking, then he becomes even faster, because he's fast now, but it's a slow start. And in terms of, he was here in the winter, he was here in the spring, but he's still just a true freshman and is still working his way into understanding the defense. I talked to Steele Chambers about that today, where I asked him, how difficult is it to try to keep up with Jim Knowles with your understanding of the defense when he's the one who created the defense? And I think he said something to the effect of like, it's a B, like it's a pain. It's difficult. And all you can do is just try. And then Jim Knowles will give him crap for getting some stuff wrong, but it comes from a place of love. And it's like, well, how do you expect me to know everything when you are the only person who knows everything? Maybe him and his GAs. And so that's, as much as Steele Chambers knows, that's as little as CJ Hicks knows and is still working to learn it. But we know the physical abilities are there, good size. He's only going to get bigger and probably only get faster. And you just try and you hope. I don't know if it's by the end of this season, but by the next season, he's got everything down and he's pushing Steele Chambers for that starting will spot.
Yeah, and I think we had a long conversation on the Wednesday episode of Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning, which will go up a little bit later on this evening. But we had a long conversation there about Sonny Styles, and just you're hearing lots of stuff right now. And I think it's very, very important, in terms of people understanding what's probably going to happen this year, but also, being understanding of like, these are 18-year-olds, these are 17-year-olds, 19-year-olds. let's not put undue pressure on them. I think CJ Hicks is sort of in the same boat as Sonny Styles, where you need to sort of expect you're going to see him. This is a special teams kind of season for him, and you may see him in the third and fourth quarters against Rutgers or Arkansas State or Toledo or any of those. But I think you're gonna people look at a 5-star player coming in, and a linebacker unit that was not particularly deep and not particularly good last year. And I think the inclination is, well, he's a 5-star, so he should be able to come in right away and just start day one. And it's like, just you gotta pump the brakes a little bit there with him. You got to pump the brakes a little with Sonny Styles. I think you're hearing the stuff that is indicative of them being on track to contribute in some form this year and take a bigger role next year. And how much bigger, we'll worry about that a year from now. But you're sort of hearing the right things with those guys, because there are ways for guys to talk to you when it's like, well, I don't think we've heard drinking through a fire hose yet. I don't think there are certain things you hear from coaches that are like, this dude is overwhelmed right now, and that's okay because he's a freshman, but he is overwhelmed right now. And you're not hearing it really with either of those guys. So that's a positive sign. But at the same time, I think everyone just needs to make sure you are not going in with the expectation these guys are starting day one or, major contributors day one. It sounds like they are pretty happy with, two of their linebackers to start at the Will and the Mike spots. And, and that's good. You don't want to have to throw a true freshman into the fire day one, especially against a team like Notre Dame. That's asking for trouble. And it doesn't sound like from any indications that that's going to be the case. So that's, you're probably not going to hear a ton from CJ Hicks super early in the season, and that's a good thing.
Here's the scenario that I see with CJ Hicks, who is behind Steel Chambers and will be behind him again next year, should Steel Chambers be still with the team. It's like when Malik Harrison was backing up Jerome Baker. And the first year, you didn't really see much. Second year, he was 2016, 2017, whichever it was. But Malik Harrison had 36 tackles as Jerome Baker's backup. And then it's Jerome Baker off to the NFL, and it's Malik Harrison's turn. And you get 2 years of seasoning, and then boom, you're leading the defense for a year or two, depending on how long you stay around. And I kind of think that's how things are setting up for CJ Hicks. Because right now, the way Jim Knowles has talked about Steel Chambers and Tommy Eichenberg, if they are here next year, they are also starting because they are two of the leaders of the defense. So I don't see anybody displacing them. I don't know that either of them will be in a position to leave early, though I think if Ohio State is going to be a top 5 defense like Jim Knowles wants, one of those guys needs to be good enough to leave. And, whether that's a 4th-round draft pick or 3rd round like Malik Harrison, or 1st round like Darren Lee or Ryan Shazier. I don't know, but the defense has to be good enough to where there are decisions for guys, and it may not be a good decision, but you're thinking, hey, should I go? I will get drafted. Because if there's nobody with a decision, then that's not a good sign.
Right. And, I think there's the question people would have is, why would you leave if you're going to be a 4th-round pick? And, sometimes your draft grade doesn't match where you get picked. But the other thing is, sometimes the things that make you a 4th-round pick are things that are not necessarily going to change, height, speed, the stuff. You're not going to magically go from a 4.7 guy to a 4.4 guy, which, that might be the difference between being a 4th-round pick and a 1st-round pick at the same position. So, if you're having a good enough season this year that you're going, that you're going to go start that clock, get that second contract 1 year earlier. That's what motivates a lot of this, is not necessarily that first year, but it's okay. If I leave now and 2023 is my rookie year, well, then I get to that second contract, which is generally where you're going to make your money. That happens a year earlier. And, with the length of NFL careers being what it is, if you can get paid to play and you can get yourself on a roster and stick and, start a real career, NIL is wonderful, but you're probably not making, second contract NFL money no matter who you are. So yeah, I don't know that I would necessarily say either one right now. I would, is like better than 50-50 to leave after this season. But I think you're right. If it's even a conversation, that's a very positive thing for Ohio State.
Yeah. A question from Old Okie. Coach Knowles made it sound like the defensive line was whooping on the offensive line. What have you heard? Jim Knowles did say that there is a very deep defensive line at Ohio State and that they will be able to unleash on offenses. He did say the word unleash, I believe, but also he was asked, hey, so just tell us some guys who are standing out. And he's like, well, I don't. They're all standing, everybody, frankly, and that's a standard answer, but it was also there. I think there was some truth to it because he was like effusive in his praise of the defensive line, but he did say that Teron Vincent and Jerron Cage are pushing the interior of the offensive line back. And I wonder, I don't think he said this because everybody just talks about Tyleik Williams and Mike Hall on the interior, and nobody talks about Teron Vincent and Jerron Cage. But I think people need to remember that those two are grown men, and having a pair of grown men at defensive tackle on the interior, whether or not they get to into the backfield, as long as they don't get pushed into the linebackers, then things are good there with those two. And so, yeah, he did mention single those two out, but also just talk about essentially the waves that the rush men will have. And he wasn't talking about. I don't think he was asked about really any defensive ends, and I don't believe he really spoke about any specific defensive ends, which I don't know if that's, again, coaches don't like to single players out because, well, we'll forget somebody and somebody's going to get mad. Somebody's mom is going to get mad. But it's just there's no concern from him when talking about the defensive line. There is concern from him when talking about the cornerback depth. So he has shared with us his concerns, but he's also shared with us some of his non-concerns. And one other thing he said was, he was asked, are you happy? And he said things are going well, but I don't want to be happy. I don't want to be satisfied. I want to keep pushing these guys. And so for him to not want to be happy but still be happy with the defensive line, I think that's a good sign.
Yeah, one of the things with new coaches is you're always kind of figuring out, okay, is this guy a, perpetually optimistic sunshine and rainbows guy? Is this someone who is, either afraid to or just completely unwilling to say good things for fear of jinxing anything or for fear of people getting a big head or getting too, getting complacent maybe? I feel like with Knowles, we're sort of seeing that he's somewhere in the middle there, and you're probably going to get a fairly honest assessment there. And, I don't know if not saying anything is, about the defensive ends. It's like, well, yeah, that could be, I don't want to leave anyone out. That could be, well, they're doing okay, but there's still a lot of work to do. And, it's also probably not a coincidence that he's talking about guys who are, Jerron Cage, this is his 6th year. This is Teron Vincent's, fifth year, because he was there in 18. So, you're talking about older guys, and I think, older guys are probably a little more likely, especially older guys who are not necessarily proven yet, or who have not gotten to where they need to get. Those are guys who maybe won't get a big head about it. So I feel like we're still learning a little bit about Knowles and how he talks about guys and who he talks about and all that kind of stuff. But it seems like, so far I haven't seen or heard anything from him that was like, well, that was obviously not true. Like every once in a while you'll have one of those from a coach where it's like, that is definitely not a thing that you really think. I don't think we've had one of those from Knowles. So, until you do, I think you take that as, take what he says as, more or less true.
I remember one time Urban Meyer said something to the effect of, we need to have the best fall camp in the history of football. And I was thinking, I don't know I don't know if that's even possible. 2, you can't possibly, how do you judge that? First of all, who's won now? Like who's the top now? And then you have to have something to compare it to. But yeah, there's stuff like that. And I don't think we've hit that yet. Comment from Bob Wood Sr. You guys are getting tough to find, but I'm glad I did. Go Bucks. Yeah, if you I told you guys don't put us on GeoGuessr. Like, let's just stick with regular YouTube with an easy address. Don't make people try to find us. But yes, thank you for finding us. Make us easier to find. Hit subscribe, hit the bell if you haven't, and we appreciate those of you who have as the channel grows and we become much easier to find. I'm typically a shut-in by nature, but I don't like to be a shut-in on YouTube when I'm actually doing something. It's like, well, if I'm doing something, people better be here. Gosh darn it. There you go. Question, comment here, Tom. Any plans to add college kids or anonymous Greek people to the Buckeye Huddle team? Next question, please, as we thank you very much. Jordan Kapler, thank you for bailing us out. Would you guys like to see football scores go back to the Tressel era or lean into the basketball scores mentality and see games end in the 80s to 100s?
See, I feel like generally more offense to a point is more entertaining. You get to a point where when it is like basketball and just teams just score, at some point it stops being super entertaining. It's like watching the NHL All-Star game where the score ends up, 13-9 or something like that. And it's like no goal really means that much at some point. I think if you're in sort of the area that a lot of college football playoff games tend to be in, the 42-28, 45-35, think back to the 2006 Ohio State Michigan game, 42-39. Like, that was an exciting game, lots of offense, but you had some stops too. It was not just teams just going up and down the field against each other. So I think, I tend towards more offense, but also my interest level goes up. And then you get to a certain point where it's just like, all right, if this game is going to be 72-70, like at some point I start dropping down a little bit too.
I'm okay with great defense. I don't like bad offense. And bad offense is it's tough to watch, and I don't need to watch a whole bunch of punting. I don't recall anybody complaining about the Rose Bowl, the Ohio State-Utah Rose Bowl. Sometimes points just make things better. I'm okay with high-scoring games, but I don't also when there's no defense, that's an issue. And there's certainly a happy medium. I think if you look at the nation's top scoring teams, I don't know how much like the top has changed. There's just probably more teams closer to the top than in the past, like more teams scoring 40 points a game than maybe ever before. But there's also way more defenses, more offenses, just the differences in all of these things. I mean, you're talking Tressel's day, the read option was just coming, like it was just becoming a thing, and it was like the new thing. And now that is almost passe, and you're moving past that.
Right. And that's how college football typically goes, is you have, you go one direction, and, the offense, everyone is loaded up to stop the rondane running back, and you get your three big linebackers and all kind of stuff. And now we're gonna swing the other way, and we're gonna, that could be the air raid, that could be the, just the spread offense in general, and then the defense adjusts to whatever the offense is doing, and then then you go back the other way, or you do something different. And I think right now RPOs are kind of the thing that is doing that. Sort of the more or less the cutting edge, sort of the widespread cutting edge at this point. It was cutting edge a couple of years ago. Now it's sort of getting more widespread, and now you're seeing defenses adjust. And so Ohio State's going to a 4-2-5 this year for the first time. Sort of officially only playing two linebackers and not three. And it feels like at some point there's probably a little bit of a market inefficiency here, where if you are the team that is going to just load up and run power, you might be able to take advantage of teams who are, building their whole team to do one thing, and then you're going, you're zagging while everyone else is zigging. And, I am a big advocate of, if you are a team, you are a program that is just sort of like hopeless, run the triple, man. Like there's a reason that Army and Navy and Air Force, who are, have extreme recruiting limitations on them in terms of size, in terms of weight, in terms of, you have to have a letter from your congressman, a personal recommendation for your congressman to get in. Like, that is not something that everyone can do. So you are very limited in terms of your player pool. There's a reason that the triple works for them. You got to kind of zig when people are zagging. I just saw, GDJ, Jair Brown lost his black stripe today too. We were there, we asked, and we were only told one. So either this is late breaking news. It just posted about 10 minutes ago on the Ohio State Twitter account. He's an interesting person, because we did a draft of the black stripe, who will be the first freshman to lose his black stripe. Jair Brown went 14th out of the true freshmen. Tony is pointing with his thumb to himself, because Tony does not know that he is mine. Jair Brown, 30 points, black stripe draft. I knew I could wait. I knew he would be number one, but I also knew he would be foolish enough to not recognize that. So you took a bunch of guys before that. I tried to let you have this one, bud, but you didn't do it. So 30 points for me for Jair Brown on the black. Don't worry, I wrote down the scoring. 30 points for the first freshman to lose it. 25 after that. 20 for the third one, and then 1 point down from after that.
Well, the first freshman to lose it in fall camp?
No, the first freshman. Did any true freshman lose it in the spring?
Like Caden Curry and CJ Hicks, and I think there's a number of them.
Oh, did they? Oh, well.
I know, it was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago.
Brown,
that was 5 YouTube channels ago. I can't keep track of this stuff.
Fair point. Jair Brown was the first or second silver bullet of the day for Jim Knowles so far in camp, and I think that's another indicator that this is a kid. And based on how deep the corners are right now, he has taken full advantage of this opportunity and is making some noise and certainly doing well. Before we get to this question, we've got a couple of questions on the message board, Tom, and one of them is a question from Fort Wayne Buckeye. Does Tom wear a blue shirt on virtually every episode just to irritate Buckeye fans, or does he just not have anything else in his closet? I would say to this, Tom, I don't think that's the only thing you do that is irritating, but answer the question, please.
Thank you. I appreciate the support. My wife likes me in blue, so therefore I wear blue. So It's fine. I do have, I think I wore a gray shirt to interviews yesterday. We had a gray shirt. I had a gray shirt on yesterday. So it's not exclusively blue, but it's a regular part of the rotation. And generally you don't really want to be wearing the colors of the team that me wearing scarlet or Tony wearing scarlet to interviews is like, it's a little, it's not like you're wearing a Ohio State starter jacket or something, but you're still, it's still like, it's a little iffy. So
but I swear I do remember you showing up in a white cowboy hat, a white outfit, a cape, and a red goatee one time. What do you say about that, sir?
Well, I had a pretty fly convertible, so that was, it felt appropriate, I think. So, that's, I don't know what to tell you. Like, dress like your hero day comes once a year, and sometimes you just gotta do it.
Let your flag fly, man. Hardy Jens, now that the Big Ten is set to break up with ESPN, would have to think Fox will go full court press on fighting for game day eyeballs. What would you do to improve the Fox pre-big noon show? I really liked what they had with Urban Meyer before last season. I thought that was by far a much better show. It was more analytical. It was not a joke. It did not have cackling, which I think here's one of my things about wanting – I don't need cackling on my show, and that's about all Desmond Howard does. And if you've eliminated that, you already have become a better show. Now, they go to Bob Stoops last year, not nearly as good. And say what you want about Urban. He made the show better. Say what you want about him as a coach, as a person, as a human. As a TV person, a football TV person, he's pretty good. Now, I do think they have a 2-hour show. I think they're eventually going to go 3 hours and just try to go from 9 in the morning on Fox until 2 in the morning on FS1. When you get that late night Big Ten game out west, or whatever, or go as late as you can and just all day as much as you can because you paid for it. You've got to, the more inventory you have, the more ads you can run. I think I do wonder, Tom, is it better to do a football show or an entertainment show? I prefer the football show, but they try to make this for everybody, so there has to be some entertainment. And I don't need concerts. I'll say that.
Yeah, it feels like a lot of times these shows are produced with the idea that, well, the football people are going to watch anyway. So if we can get something that, that I'm going to be making some broad sweeping generalizations here. And if if you are a woman who obviously loves football, like, great, that's cool. Demographically, it's a bunch of like 40-year-old white guys sitting on their couch and watching, or, it is 18 to 54 is the target demo, which is, the group that you want watching because they have, the most purchasing power. Like, it's great if kids are watching, but your kids aren't going to be going out and buying Tide detergent or Rotel chili or whatever. So you want the 18 to 54-year-old demographic to be watching. And if you can get the 18 to 54-year-old guy, you figure the 18 to 54-year-old guy is watching anyway. If you can make a show that his wife also wants to sit down and watch and also finds entertaining, then you've doubled your potential audience, and you've improved your demographics and all that. So, I feel like what Fox is going to do is, if you're familiar with the cable news business model, ESPN is going to just go harder into the SEC side. Fox is going to go harder into the Big Ten side. You're going to hear all the stuff as a Big Ten fan. You're not going to hear anything that makes you upset. You're not going to hear them talking about how the SEC actually really, if you lined up these 14 teams, SEC, or 16 teams, SEC versus Big Ten, the SEC is going to go like 13-3. Like, you're not going to hear that on Fox. And you're also not going to hear on ESPN, hey, listen, the Big Ten could very easily win a 1 through 16, matchup. You're going to on ESPN, you're going to hear, oh yeah, no, they're going to go 13-3. They're going to go, the SEC would just dominate. Everyone knows this is the greatest conference in the world. You're going to get told what you want to hear, is what I think is probably going to happen, which is, it's too bad, because I think there isn't doing the Ross Fulton shows that I do, when I have Ross on the show, or when Ross is posting on the board, talking about, helping people understand the game of football better. What's the difference between inside zone and outside zone? Like, explain that, like, do a segment explaining that. Make people smarter, don't just tell them what they want to hear. It feels to me like you're only going to get more and more into, the SEC Ministry of Truth and the Big Ten Ministry of Truth, as your two network pregame shows. One thing that I do think would be really fascinating would be, can you turn FS1 or FS2 into like the college football red zone channel, where all of your, every Fox property, whatever is interesting that's happening on there at some point, like, can you do basically a Fox red zone, Big Ten red zone channel, or a, Big Ten and Big 12, or whoever Fox has deals with at that point. That might be kind of an interesting, scoreboard show, but you're also just constantly cutting in live to new stuff. That might be an interesting thing to do with one of your channels that is, you're generally not going to get, the FS2 game. A lot of times that's, some Tulsa versus Rice kind of game, which 10,000 people are watching or whatever. A red zone channel type thing with as much inventory as they're going to have, I think would be pretty interesting.
The thing that I keep pounding the table for, or trying to put out into the world, is Big Ten Network should have should have a 12 p.m. game, a 3:30 p.m. game, and if there's a night game, have a night game. Wall-to-wall games on Big Ten Network, and then the overflow channels could be that red zone channel, the overflow Big Ten channel, Big Ten Network, because there's like 2 or 3 or 4 overflow Big Ten Network channels that you could have be. I said all-day studio show, but that could be a red zone studio show, stuff like that, where It doesn't have to be 7 days a week. It can just be that day, because you're going to have, without ESPN, without ABC, without ESPN2, without ESPNU, all of those games the Big Ten games that would show up there have to go to FS1, have to go to BTN, and really those ESPN games, that third tier, second tier mainly. So there's going to be, CBS is getting one, NBC is getting one, Fox proper is getting one, and then there's however many games just split up between Big Ten Network and FS1 and Peacock, perhaps, and then maybe an Apple or Amazon, like on a Friday night. I think Big Ten Network just needs to be all day football. And as I said, use one of those overflows for the red zone or FS2. I know they still have contracts with other conferences, and CUSA and the Sun Belt or whomever. Like, that's still probably something that they would like to keep. But there are ways to make this just in your face Big Ten football. And in terms of improving that Fox show, I don't know what kind of pregame show NBC or CBS are planning. Certainly nothing at 9, 10, 11 in the morning. Have people from all of the networks on your show. You are all Big Ten partners. Have, somebody come in. I am also, Tom, here's my thing. You mentioned like the cable news thing. Gary Danielson, who I would expect to flee to ESPN as quickly as possible. You can keep him at CBS, and then he becomes the devil's advocate that you need on all of these cable news talking shows where it's MSNBC, but we need a conservative. It's Fox News, but we need a Democrat. He is the opposite of what your channel is, and so now you have you can debate about the SEC, and then you can also make him look bad, and you can drag him, or you build him into something, and it's just awful.
That does sound like something I would not watch at gunpoint. So that sounds great. Mark May, a great suggestion there. Yes. I think you get people. Hate watching has never really been my thing. Like, that's just like, I don't need to hear people saying stuff intentionally, insightful stuff just to, get me to, like, this is the TV version of don't quote tweet to, something to dunk on it, because people just want the attention and they just want the interaction. Don't do that. So don't hate watch something. Like, just you can do something else with your life other than watch TV. I got to tell you, I have not, and part of this is we're working on a lot of Saturdays, especially out of Saturday mornings. I literally cannot tell you the last time I watched College Game Day or Big Noon Kickoff. I don't know that I have watched either of those shows for, more than you turn the noon game on and you see the last 5 minutes of game day kind of thing. Other than that, I literally don't think I've done it in 4 to 5 years. It's just, there is better stuff to do with your time in a lot of cases than that. So, if that's your thing, like, God bless. I'm not going to tell you how to live your life, but generally, the way those shows are structured, I just don't find them particularly compelling content. So I just do something else with my Saturday morning. And then that makes it easier on a Saturday afternoon. On a bye week, Ohio State's off and I'm home. That makes it much easier to say, look, I took the kids to the park, hockey practice, and went to Home Depot and picked up whatever and got, a project done, and I got the lawn mowed. And now I'm going to sit on my butt for the next 15 hours and watch college football. And that makes that a much easier sell at home, that you have not wasted your whole day. You've got, look, I got all my stuff done, and now I'm done, and now I can watch college football.
You were productive in the morning. Now leave me alone. This question from Adam Baker. Any chance for Sonny Styles or CJ Hicks to get into the 2 deep and earn some playing time? Glad you guys are back just in time for the season. Thank you for finding us. The CJ Hicks thing, it was the first day of practice that we saw. It was Chip Trainum repping in front of CJ Hicks. And then the second time we saw them, I saw CJ Hicks repping in front of Chip Trainum. Now, again, they all work with the 1s and 2s, and they all just mix in. So that was like interesting. But then we get out of practice today, and it's Chip Trainum, who has lost his black stripe, who Steel Chambers and others said, he probably should have lost it in the spring. He came in. He was one of the leaders right away in the offseason workouts. He has done everything that is asked. Everybody loves him. He's just really made himself a part of the team. And I think it's too early to say that he has won that backup will linebacker spot, especially since there are so many people looking at it right now. But I think right now, if there's a pecking order, for me, it's Steel Chambers, Chip Trainum, CJ Hicks, Sonny Styles. Similar, interestingly, when Jim Knowles was asked, like, what's the role for Sonny Styles, he did also say too early to tell, just like he did J.K. Johnson. But when you also have Jim Knowles saying, like, too early to tell, he's a secret weapon, as he did with Sonny Styles, it's like the addendum becomes the story rather than it is also too early to tell for Sonny Styles. I think it's going to be really difficult for him to break into that two deep at safety when you've got the number of safeties that Ohio State has.
Yeah, I think it's a very important thing for people to understand. I think we said this earlier. You were going to hear us say this again on the Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning show that will come out a little later on this evening. It is just very important to go into the season with realistic expectations. Like, this is the fact that you don't see these guys play day one. They're not going to start day one. That does not mean they're a bust. That does not mean that they are never going to be good. It means Sonny Styles should still be a high school football player. Sonny Styles should still be playing in Pickerington this year, and he's going to be playing in Columbus. That in and of itself is impressive. That you're just even holding your head above water. That is real impressive that you're doing that. And CJ Hicks is. We'll see where he ends up in a couple weeks. We'll see where he is going into the season. I would not be shocked to see CJ Hicks on the two deep at some point this season. I wouldn't be shocked to see Sonny Styles on the two deep at some point this season. I think there's, maybe potentially more guys to kind of have to jump over if you're Sonny Styles to get on that two deep, but it's possible. And, with you have enough injuries, everyone can be on the two deep at some point. So, I think it's something that you have to be patient. You have to just recognize that these are, true freshmen, and they are extremely talented true freshmen. I think everyone sees it. I think everyone sees the possibilities, but you just be patient and, check in again in mid-October, and we'll sort of see, you'll have a good sense for the Arkansas State game. When do those guys start coming in on defense? Are they coming in the third quarter, 10 minutes left in the third quarter, or are they coming in with 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter? That's going to be probably a good first real true barometer, because, they haven't put out a depth chart for a few years. That's how you kind of figure out what the depth chart is when do you see these guys? What order do you see these guys in? And, that's when I think you'll have your first, we'll have a couple more data points during fall camp. That's when I think you're going to have your real first data point, is like that Arkansas State game.
All right. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Now, I will say we are planning another stream tomorrow around 3 p.m. So hit the bell. You'll be notified when we go live. We've got a bunch more to talk about with the television deals, Apple getting involved. Is it a good thing or is it a bad thing to leave ESPN behind? I think that's a question that 5 years ago has a different answer than it does now. And so we will discuss all of that and much more tomorrow. I'm looking forward to that, Tom. I know you are as well. Don't speak. No, go ahead and tell us what's upcoming on the Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning show.
Well, Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for the show that's going to go up on Tuesday night for Wednesday morning. I have Tony Gerdeman on. We're going to be talking all about a lot more detail and some very different stuff, and a lot of stuff we didn't cover here, intentionally didn't cover here, from stuff we heard from Jim Knowles, stuff we heard from other linebackers. Taraja Mitchell had a ton of interesting stuff to talk about. We didn't mention any of it here, so you can find Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning If you're listening to this as a podcast, you can find that same spot. Just search Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning, and of course, it'll be on the same YouTube channel. So make sure you hit the bell. And if you search Buckeye Huddle on YouTube and you can't find it, just check Tony's Twitter, my Twitter. We have tweeted a link to this show on those accounts on Tuesday afternoon. So just click the link there. That'll take you to the channel. You can watch, you can subscribe. Everything you guys can do in terms of, thumbs up on Twitter or thumbs up on YouTube, comments on YouTube, subscribing to the channel on YouTube, subscribing to the podcast on whatever your podcast platform of choice is, 5-star reviews, comment, writing out a review. All of that stuff is super, super helpful as we are building our audience back up from more or less from scratch as we head into the college football season, which is only, Tony, 24 days away.
Perfect. Phone calls to your congressman, protests in the streets, sit-ins, whatever it takes. We do appreciate all of you guys, first of all, working hard to find us and then sticking with us, and no tattoos. But that will do it for us today, and we will talk to you all tomorrow.